Hey, welcome back to the Vinyl Narrative. Now, today we're going to be diving into the latest offering from the Jazz Dispensary Top Shelf series, and that is, of course, Joe Henderson's Tetragon. And this is a record that I was really looking forward to because if you've been following this Top Shelf series so far, I think Craft Recordings have been kind of quietly building one of the most consistent and interesting jazz reissue campaigns out in the market today. Especially for jazz lovers and jazz fusion lovers. So yeah, this one I was really excited to get my hands on because I love this record, and I think this one might be one of their best yet. So let's get into a review of it. So Joe Henderson's Tetragon was originally released in 1968 on Milestone Records. And I think Milestone is one of those labels that doesn't quite get the attention that the likes of other jazz labels like Blue Note or Impulse get. But when you start to kind of dig into their catalogue, there's some serious gems in there. I absolutely love loads of albums that they put out back in the day. And Craft, through this Jazz Dispensary Top Shelf series, they've clearly recognised that, I think, that there is a deep catalogue to mine here. And they've already given us multiple different reissues. So of course we've got Multiple by Joe Henderson that came out last year. It's an absolutely phenomenal reissue, that one. We've also had The Elements, If I Move My Head, which was a few years ago now with of course Alice Coltrane and Joe Henderson. But we've also had other albums like Johnny Hammond Smith's Gears, which, you know, I absolutely love that record, such an influential record. So they're really starting to carve out a lane for just fantastic jazz fusion and very jazz-centric releases. And I'd love to see them go a bit deeper, actually. I'd love to see them produce some sort of Joe Henderson box set, but you know, it's probably wishful thinking at this point, considering they've already put out a lot of his output already. So in terms of where Tetragon sits in Joe Henderson's discography, it was released obviously in the late 60s, which is post his Blue Note era, I guess, and where he's actually starting to kind of stretch his style a little bit more. You've still got that hard bop kind of sound there, but there's clear modal explorations across this record, which is really cool to listen to. And I think what really kind of elevates this album actually is just the lineup. It's insanely good. You've got obviously Joe Henderson on tenor sax as the band leader. You've got Don Friedman, or either Don Friedman or Kenny Barron on piano, depending on the session. Then you've got the legendary Ron Carter on the bass. And then on the drums, you've either got Jack DeJohnette, what a phenomenal drummer he is. And then on some sessions, you've also got Lewis Hayes on drums, and he's no slouch either. So a fantastic lineup there across the board, and it's what really makes this album so special, because it's just an all-star cast. And you know, I think that is a real credit to Joe Henderson as a player and a band leader. He knew exactly who to bring in to kind of achieve the sound that he had in his head. So yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't think Joe ever released a bad album, if I'm honest. You know, whether or not he was the band leader or he was a part of a larger ensemble with someone else as the band leader, I think he's just, yeah, never released a bad record that I've heard, at least anyway. Now, in terms of when you actually drop the needle on this record, you know, it absolutely delivers. Everything here is just phenomenal, including the playing. You've got that kind of lyrical quality to his style, and those slightly kind of trilling phrases that he introduces across this record, where he started to show that actually he's more than just a straightforward player. You know, the way he shapes his lines across all of this record is fantastic as well. It's very controlled and thoughtful, I think is probably the best way I would describe it, but still incredibly melodic. So it's not like just what some people would think is noise. It's very melodic to me. And I think crucially, it's never boring to listen to, which is what you want from a jazz record. You don't just want to put it on and have it sit in the background. It's the kind of album that you put on and you are locked in from the start, and it's very evident actually that the band are completely locked in as well. And that's what I think makes Tetragon such a great listen, because it's very rewarding. You discover something new every time you put it on. It demands repeat listens, I think is the best way I would describe it. You know, it's not just demonstrating Henderson as a soloist, it's all about the interplay between the band and the composition that they are performing. each track kind of describes or presents at least a different angle. So it's not one note the whole way through either. So it refers very much back to the kind of title of Tetragon. There's multiple sides here with multiple perspectives from each band member. So yeah, fantastic record. Okay, let's talk about the actual physical packaging of this album. So we've got a single tip-on glossy jacket, which is absolutely beautiful. So you've got the glossy front, and then on the back you've got that kind of typical tip-on matte back there with the track listing and also some liner notes. And these are the original liner notes, which is essentially an interview with Joe Henderson. And I forget the Orrin Kempnews, is the person who wrote the liner notes, or did the interview at least, with Joe Henderson. And it's a really insightful read actually as to how he kind of came up with this record and the compositions and what other band members contributed to it as well. And you could say that the cover maybe looks a bit, the design of the artwork looks a bit dated, but I kind of like it. It's very of its time, but I really like the charm of it. It just shows that period of kind of graphic design in the late 60s, which is really cool. But maybe not the most adventurous of covers, I guess, but I like it anyway. Now onto the pressing quality and the mastering. Now, it looks like Jazz Dispensary or Craft are now starting to use Fidelity Record Pressings instead of QRP and instead of RTI for this series, which is quite cool because I think Fidelity Record Pressing over in the US are fast becoming my favourite pressing plant. I know I'm just going to get absolute quality with all of their pressings. They're doing amazing work across the board on a number of different reissue campaigns. So obviously MoFi own the plant, so they use it for all of their pressings. But they're also doing stuff with Rhino Reserves, and I've not had a single bad release from that's been pressed at Fidelity from either MoFi or Craft or from Rhino either. So fantastic stuff. It's flat, it's centered, and it's incredibly quiet. They use this amazing compound over at Fidelity. Not quite sure what it is, but it's dead quiet. Like no non-fill, no popping, no crackle, no pops. I didn't even have to give this a clean till it sounded fantastic straight out the jacket. And there is a view of the label there. The kind of classically recreated Milestone labels. So that's always a nice attention to detail as well with these kind of reissues. I'll just give you a quick view of the hype sticker. Hopefully you guys can see that a bit better. And then on to the mastering. Now it's, of course, it is Kevin Gray at Cohearent Audio. It's cut from the original analog stereo tapes. And it's a normal analog cut, AAA. Of course it is. If Kevin Gray's involved, it typically is a AAA cut, and you can hear it straight away. The soundstage on this is it's wide, but it's well defined. It's not overly miles and miles apart. The band are still in the same room, but what stood out to me, was the instruments preparation on this record. It sounds fantastic. Everything has its own space, and I know Kevin Gray is often called like the king of the mids in terms of his ability to kind of remaster an EQ, but I think what's impressive here is he's achieved a really nice balance across the board and the band. Joe's saxophone sits very nicely in the center of the soundstage, but it's not like it's not so far forward that he's completely separated from the band. It's nicely sat in the mix, and it's full of detail, full of texture. And it never feels like artificial in any way, which is fantastic because obviously it's an analog cut. It's got that degree of warmth to it, doesn't sound digital in any way. And very much the band are all there in the same room. Like I say, they sound like they're part of an ensemble. And that level of balance is really difficult to get right, I think, especially on those kind of saxophone-led sessions. But I think Kevin has nailed it on this cut. Sounds absolutely brilliant. So hats off to Kevin there. Now, in terms of highlights on this record, to be honest, there's no lowlights at all. I loved every track on here, and this release, just in general, from the packaging to the mastering to the performances across the record, it's the complete package. It's everything you want in a jazz record. But if you are new to this record, then I would say the key tracks to check out would be RJ, which is a Ron Carter penned song. It's a really lovely piece actually. He dedicated it to one of his sons, which is nice, and it's just got a nice vibe and a nice sense of space and feel across the track. And then the other one, if you're only picking two, I would say Tetragon, the title track, is another one that's really one that you want to hear. It kind of shifts, you get these shifts in like dynamics in the mood, and you get that real sense of interplay between all of the players in the band, which is just a lovely track. But yeah, to be quite frank, you should listen to this album start to finish rather than just selecting two tracks. But if you're new to jazz or new to Joe Henderson as a player, those two are the ones I would recommend. And then there's the value, I guess, of this record. So I paid, I think it was £32 to get this delivered from the Craft website, which I think is pretty good value for money, to be honest, especially importing it in from the US. I had some credit left over. I think it was originally advertised as like $35, if I remember rightly. But after shipping, I managed to bring everything down to the equivalent of like £32. So, but to be honest, if you find this out in the UK, in the wild, or in your record shop, for anything under £35, I think it's excellent value for money. Don't hesitate on picking this one up. This for me is yet another outstanding and standout release from the Jazz Dispensary series. And if this is the direction that Jazz Dispensary are going in terms of the releases and starting to mine through that Milestone catalogue, I think we're in for a real treat here, because hopefully we start to see a bit more Joe Henderson, because there's still some fantastic records they haven't reissued yet from Joe. But also I'd love to see some more Johnny Hammond Smith. I'd also love to see some more Gary Bartz in this series, because I know they've done a few of them already, but I've not managed to pick them up, but I'd love to see more come out. So have you picked this one up already? Let me know down in the comments. What's your favourite Joe Henderson record as well? Is it Tetragon? Is that right at the top for you? Or do you go for something more in his Blue Note era? Or do you go for something like The Elements, where he's kind of collaborating with Alice Coltrane? Let me know down in the comments. So if you've enjoyed this review, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to The Vinyl Narrative. I'd really appreciate it. But there's only one thing left to say, I guess. It's take care of yourselves, and please keep on spinning your records.